right, we are back with another FERMAT Fridays, and today I have our first guest from this team. I've got Tyler joining us on the sales side of things. Tyler, maybe I'll get you to introduce yourself here so that we can humanize you a bit instead of, oh, we just got some sales guy from FERMAT on the show today.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm Tyler. I am a sales guy. The reason, just useful for this conversation or relevant rather, is time before FERMAT, I spent over a decade running an apparel brand. I've also spent 6 years in D2C SaaS. So my love for e-com and D2C, the roots are very, very deep. If that doesn't humanize me with the folks that I'm interfacing with, then I really don't know what I'm doing here.
Love it. Definitely runs deep in the D2C space. Now, for this conversation, Ty, what I'm hoping to kind of like give our viewers, our listeners kind of like a look or a peek behind is like what to expect if they are to book a demo with FERMAT. I feel like in software sales, like booking a demo can be pretty intimidating. So I kind of want to like demystify what that process looks like for us. So where I was hoping we could start is like, someone books a demo with us, we see who that brand is, like what happens now? What are you looking at? How are you prepping? And like, what are you bringing to that first call with that brand?
Yeah, awesome question. First and foremost, and funny enough, just to like build on that intro, like the number one thing that I'm doing, and this really goes for all of us, salespeople on the FERMAT side, is number one, like we actually care about seeing these brands succeed. So we're looking at the brand, we're looking at their ad library, we're getting a feel for their creative, what are the audiences they're targeting, because we want this to work. And if this is not a good fit for the brand, then like we have no interest in selling a bad bag of goods to anybody, quite frankly. And so once we see a meeting come through, or we book a meeting with somebody, we all spend a lot of time just getting a feel for that brand and how might this look in the lens of FERMAT, and what might we be able to do that would be beneficial for the brand by looking at what they're doing today, kind of business as usual.
Yeah, I like that. What they're doing today, but I think like another thing that our team's really good at is also like what are they not doing today? So like,
Yeah.
hey, we take a look at that ad account and like what we're mostly looking for is like, okay, what are we talking about? What are the value props? Who are we targeting? And like where are the destinations of those ads pointing today? So we can get a
Yep.
feel of like what's potentially working today, what is kind of like the level of I don't want to say sophistication, but like how many landers are we going to? What's the variety of those landers, et cetera, so that we can get an idea of like, yep, they're doing this today. Hey, maybe we could level something up here because like this particular piece is missing.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And that's, because there's different like points, in the journey as well, right? Like there are brands who've never touched landers. They only have gone to PDP or collection page. And so you need to understand and meet them where they are in that journey versus, on the other side of the spectrum, you'll click through the ad library and every single ad has its, own unique landing page. And so understanding that and where they are with the level of experimentation and personalization, and where they are on that spectrum, if you don't have that information, and you're not able to come into the call with a point of view that's going to be meaningful for these brands and potentially, ideally helpful, then it's not a good experience for the brand.
Yeah, so like TLDR, we're trying to be as strategic as possible with helping with like a current problem or spotting a opportunity that we think that we can go help them leverage. And like, do you maybe have an example? Like, we won't give brand names here, but like, do you have an example of maybe like a brand you've recently been working with and like what that kind of looked like and how that kind of came about when we got into the demo?
Yeah. So, there's a bunch of them. So, I'll say one like common theme, and maybe I'll break this down like somewhat category specific, is like one very common theme that I run into on a daily basis with brands, let's say either in wellness or beauty, is that they have, generally speaking, anywhere from like 3 to 5 core value props or benefits that their products are providing. And what I've heard time and time again from brands is that there are particular audiences that will hyper attach to one of those 3 to 5 things. And you can see this happening at the level of the ad where they're speaking to different audiences, they're highlighting different messaging and those benefits or value props, but then they're pushing to the same generic PDP. And so that right there is such a solid indicator of where we can very quickly and meaningfully provide value, because with FERMAT, it's like, basically zero lift to create very targeted funnels that are hyper focusing on that one thing that that person in the ad audience cares about. So that's like one theme, for example, is, in those particular spaces or categories, that's like an easy home run. Like you can very meaningfully improve ad performance in just focusing on those, those funnels for those audiences.
I love the value prop thing because like I think it dovetails into like one of the biggest benefits and like what we are actually going to be showing when we run into some of these things is like those 3 to 5 core value pillars. The ads will be specific to one of those, but like you said, like dumping someone onto the PDP, at least from like what I see, it's like supplement might go after like, let's say bloating as like a very particular value prop. And then I drop them on the PDP, and it's not like that is missing from the PDP, but it's just like such like a minute piece of the PDP. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
came in here wanting to explore more about this, or I had this problem. I land on the
Yep.
PDP, and like bloating is a bullet point and like one drop down menu in a sea of all of these
Yep.
other value props. Cause it's like, oh, that PDP has to be average because like someone coming from the site needs to be able to find everything they need. Like there's just so many
Yep.
use cases for that PDP. As a lander for an ad is just one of them. And like I love this kind of, I don't know, value, like, wow, that's ironic. Value prop of a value prop, right? Is that you can be very
Accepted
specific on
yourself.
that. I know, jeez. The thing I love about that is like some people might say something like, "Oh, I can tackle that by just having like a different lander or by building a custom page." And like one of my biggest rebuttals to that is like, yeah, that helps with the initial land messaging, but like think about how you're merchandising the products and how you're like offering specific upsells around that is like
Yep.
one, you can either be like kind of like hurt your brand by offering up the wrong thing, but you also are just like doing yourself a like AOV boosting disservice because like if I came in wanting something to help me with bloating, I see a PDP that is merchandised around that specific value prop and the lander. I'm like, yeah, I want that. I can now present different offers and upsell opportunities that are again related to that problem I came in to solve. Do you have other products that are designed to help with that same problem?
Yep.
Let's put those as upsell opportunities. And like
Yep.
you get like that creates great AOV boosting opportunities. But on the flip side is like, say I was going after a, I don't know, something we've seen before is like I sell creatine, but I want to go after selling creatine to like moms rather than like
Yeah.
my muscle beach guys.
Yep.
Is if I all of a sudden put like some crazy upsell that's like normally on my site because most of the time it's the muscle beach guy coming in and I now show that product, it's like, whoa, like what am I doing here? Like this isn't
Yeah.
actually what hooked me in.
100%. Yeah, I mean, and like I had even actually this past week, it was something along those lines where, a wellness product, there are two core reasons that people come in and purchase were alcohol substitute and stress relief. Like they do post-purchase surveys, so they have this data. They know those are the two things, two reasons why, 85-90% of these purchases are coming through. But you go to the PDP and there's like 6 different things listed. And just like you said, there's like a bullet point for the stress relief, a bullet point for the alcohol substitute element. And so people show up and it's just jarring. They're like, oh wait, maybe this isn't what I was actually, what I wanted. And like the second that seed of doubt or hesitation gets put into us, nowadays it's like we're all, we got attention spans of a gnat. If we have any bit of hesitation as we're going through that conversion, like boom, new notification, text, boom, now we're gone. Like it's done, dude. Like if I have to think about it, yeah. So you really want to be able to just like attach, just like dig your nails into that, whatever it is, and just really pull that person through as quickly as possible.
One last question here before we kind of like go like, explore kind of like deeper in what speaking to someone at FERMAT is like is when we talk to brands, like again, we do a lot of research ahead of time. Like we look at their ad libraries, we look at where they're sending people today. And like for the most part, when we end up talking to a brand, like the creative is chopped up like this, right? Like they're like we do see a lot of ads that are very specific to these types of things, but like from from everyone you've been talking to, like why do we have a tendency to see that happening at the ad level or the creative level, but like not inside the funnel? Like why do you think there's a disconnect there today?
I mean, if I were to pull one thing that is just forever true with, every brand I talk to, it's just purely bandwidth. It's like if we have, we all have finite amount of time or attention or energy, however you want to think about it. And so if we're going to allocate it anywhere and we have to choose where, it's going to be at the level of the ad like every time because acquisition is the name of the game, right? And so we need the eyes, we need the clicks. And so oftentimes I think that is the primary focus is just how do we get folks, how do we get eyeballs, how do we get clicks, how do we get traffic, and then the ability to segment and personalize really with that same rationale and logic that they're doing at the level of the ad already just becomes secondary. And so bandwidth is the number one thing that I run into is just like we don't have time. Yeah.
Yeah, the bandwidth thing, like for sure. And I think like one thing I come up against, or when I'm talking to people, it's like it's a bandwidth thing, but it's also like a well, if I'm going to go chop it up fine like that, the natural place to go think about doing that is like on the site. And if I'm
Yeah.
going to go do that on the site, then it's like, oh, I need to get like design approval. I need to get like it into the dev queue. It has to
Yep.
go through so and so's approval, then so and so's approval, and then so and so's mailman's dog walker's approval to like
Yep.
actually get something out there. So I think a lot of time when we're talking to like those growth marketers, it's a bandwidth thing, but it's also just like it's the path of least resistance. It's like I can make
Totally.
all those changes at the ad level without kind of like any of these things happening. It's just I send them to the path of least resistance, which to your point before is like a PDP, a homepage,
Yep.
a custom collection, because like those are just there and it's easier for
Yep.
me. And I think like maybe that's a good segue into like, hey, we collect all this information about like what you're doing today and how we think we can improve it. We come with all that information to the demo, like to that first call with the brand. Like, what are we showing? What are we talking about to like kind of show what FERMAT can do?
Yeah. I mean, so I mean, it's totally situational, right? Like, I don't think, if you were to talk to pull five brands that recently had a conversation with us, they would all be different conversations, right? Like, because, I mean, to a degree, obviously there's underlying themes, but the reality is like what we're trying to understand with all of that research beforehand, and then what we're trying to confirm and then really build upon in that initial conversation is what are your unique challenges? Like, obviously, at the end of the day, it's like, sure, everybody wants to reduce customer acquisition costs. Everybody wants better conversion. Like, those are just blanket, like, universal truths. But the reality is, like in the weeds, the reason why those things aren't happening is different. And so, is it an offer structure? Is it a bandwidth thing? Is it our timeline to get new pages is 2, 3, 4 weeks out because we use an external dev agency and, their roadmap and schedules are packed. So like based on the product category, like what their team structure is, what their overarching goals are, like what are the top three things you care about for the next 3 to 6 months as it relates to acquisition. All of that's going to be slightly varying based on the brand, and that's really what we're trying to uncover in that initial research process. But then also in that conversation with the brand is like, what are you running into? What are you facing? Where do you want to be? And so how we weave FERMAT into that is going to be different, right? Because like for example, to you know take this distill this out of like purely conceptual, like if I'm a wellness brand and all I care about is LTV, then obviously we're going to want to talk about the different experimentation and the learnings that we have on how do we optimize for first order subscription. Here are the, the stories of things and the way we think, our testing roadmaps, how we think about the experimentation process that have gotten our brands, our clients that had started in the same shoes as you and now are running very strong, first order subscription businesses, or efforts rather. If I am an apparel brand and I'm really focused on increasing bag size, to your point, it's like, how do we create these very relevant and unique and targeted merchandising opportunities throughout the funnel experience that are going to get folks to add a, like, complete this look type, strategy. And so really depending on the brand, the category, their goal set, what we're going to talk about, what we're going to show is going to be specific to what matters to them.
I love that. And like, so when we start, like, we get that understanding, we do the pre-work, we're going to have that conversation, either validate that like some of those problems are problems, or figure out what the problems and like the goals that they're chasing actually are, so that we can tailor the conversation specifically. I think like maybe this doesn't happen as much anymore, but I feel like a lot of people, when we end up showing the product and like, again, going from like high level, like let's talk about your problems, into like how are we going to solve them, is
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, so you're like a landing page builder. I feel like
Yeah.
that comes up pretty frequently. Like, what's your response to that? I feel like, is it still pretty common to kind of be like grouped into this landing page
Yeah.
group?
Absolutely. And like, for better or worse, right? Like, part of me loves it because it's a starting point to build upon. Like, they understand where they have a starting point to understand. And so they can build upon it. But at the same time, we are very different than just a landing page, right? And so it comes up, I would say, still 85, 90% of the time, like where, and it could just be like a vernacular thing of like, they understand that it's a funnel, but we're referring to it as a landing page just for the sake of like, that's the word in our head that we can
Yep.
pull. It makes it more relatable. But yeah, it happens all the time. And so, I mean, the response, that I have is generally, yeah, great, like 100%. That's the easiest way to think of it. If you were just to like find something you know of and relate to, boom, landing page, yeah. But then from there really unpack where the depth of FERMAT comes, or like is, and how it's so much different than a landing page. In talking through, usually it's like, the go-to that I will is, rather than try to talk about FERMAT first, is, and I actually took this from one of our colleagues, but like, you know, today, what brands are, they've got 200 different ads in the wild, right? And it's like just the things that you and I just talked about. Generally speaking, they're using different creative, they're using different copy, they're talking to different audiences, but they're all pushing to the same page. Whether it be a PDP or collection or just catch all lander. And what they've realized, that those audiences are hyper target, like need hyper targeted experiences and personalization in order for them to connect and attach all the way through that funnel, and actually convert in the most meaningful way. And so where FERMAT differs is that, rather than just moving that bottleneck one step further down from the landing page, because that's generally where the light bulb will go off. It's like, hey, with a landing page builder, if you were to just do that, you can create stunningly beautiful landing pages that are personalized, speaking to the specific audience, value props, benefits, whatever, but then add to cart, and then it's boom, just right back to the catch-all experience of, or go to PDP rather, boom, catch all PDP, catch all card experience, so on and so forth. And so once we start, bringing to light the reality that not only do you have that PDP experience or that landing page experience, but then once they get to the PDP, that's unique to that audience or that messaging or whatever. And then once they get to the level of the cart, that's a unique cart experience built specifically for that funnel, be it the audience or the messaging that it was built around. So that's generally where the light bulb will start to go off, is once they understand that they really control like an actual funnel versus just that first, experience a customer has on the LP.
Yeah, I think that's great. I sometimes refer to it as like the hub and spoke
Yeah.
methodology. Is like, you're just, if you think about it as a singular funnel, again, like yeah, custom landing pages just like abstracts that funnel by one. It's like, oh, now I have like a lot of little funnels sitting on top of one big one, which is like my PDP and my cart experience. But if I
Yeah,
think about this as like, oh, Shopify is like a spot where I can transact this and I can keep my like not just messaging, but I think like offer strategy as well, right? It's like I want to merchandise that landing page with specific products, but I want those products to be sold in a specific way. And when they add those
yeah,
to their cart, I want that particular product for this audience to show this potential upsell, or like I want to offer a gift with purchase, or my free shipping thresholds are going to be different for like this type of customer. And like that full control all the way through the funnel, like
yeah,
that's it, right? And like I love that you said like that's the light bulb moment. It's like I mess with ads to the nth degree to try to do these things, and it's like, oh, but I send them all into this same spot, and it's like I'm losing the juice.
yeah,
But if I can like keep the party going through the landing page, like all the way to the cart to transact it, like the experiences you can build become like amazing. And like one of my
yep,
favorite examples is like a get ready with me or like a shop the look is like you have an ad with like that's UGC with like someone with like three particular products, like showing how to use it is like, oh, I dropped them on the collection and I have to like add all these things individually, but like you could drop them into a funnel where you're only merchandising what was inside that ad. Cause like if someone clicked on that, like they probably want to complete the look. They're probably going for the same thing. It's like just make it super easy for them to grab those products, or like, hey,
yep,
here's the hero product. But like, hey, if you just added that other
yep,
product that was also in the ad, free shipping unlocked. Like
yep.
you just have like so many levers, so much surface area to like try to get the desired outcome out of the ads you're already putting a ton of optimization into.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like it's so funny. Exact experience I had with a brand last week was just walking through, live through their some of their meta library. There's a hoodie, click shop now, hit a collection page, and it took me like six scrolls to get to the hoodie that was in the ad. And it's like, he's like, oh yeah, that's not, that's not a good experience. Like they're probably coming here for the hoodie, and then they got to scroll down, six finger scrolls to even find it. There's no wonder that no one's converting. So yeah, and then like, even like something we haven't talked about as well is like, obviously that surface area element that you mentioned, but then the other thing is the ability to have like four or five different variations of each of those unique funnels that we're testing across different elements within each of those funnel steps. And so, based on, I mean, the learnings just compound so much quicker than like a traditional, kind of like A/B testing paradigm. And so, it's really cool to see brands that like once they lean in and they get to the point of they're running so many different experiments and variations of these funnel experiences, like how the learnings just compound and the impact that has like on their ability to scale in the most effective way.
Yeah, one thing I love to say is like you need to learn fast, but you also need to apply it fast, right? Is
Yeah,
like if I learn something, the ability to propagate what I've learned is like one of like the biggest value props of Fermat, where I feel like a lot of times it's like, oh, I learned something, and I need to like get enough learning for it to be worth going and messing with the site and like
yeah,
making a big change. So it's like, oh, maybe you're waiting and trying to find like a 2x thing, but like, okay, maybe like the summation of all these like small learnings that I'm getting are compounding over time to a bigger
exactly.
result. But like, you don't even just need to test small things. Like, I could potentially, like, in that get ready with me example that we were talking about before, is like I could merchandise that with three products. I could then split the traffic that's happening like inside of that experience and be like, okay, I'm gonna merchandise this with like 10 different products. Like, what would happen if I just gave them more options versus like
Yep,
it's not here? And like that's not a small A/B test thing. That's like a, oh, I have a thesis. Let me go experiment in that and like
yeah,
find something big.
yep, yeah, and it's great. I mean, and like I know we've talked about it before on Vermont Fridays, but the just the wealth of knowledge that our growth managers have after working with so many brands across so many different categories that have all these different goals. It's really cool to see that dynamic as well, where a brand's like, hey, I really care about just conversion. That's all right now. All I care about is conversion. And so, growth management brings just this playbook of like, here's the experiments we're going to run. Here's the iterations we're going to make based on what we've seen work really well for, brands in X category, wherever they are. So it's like the tech element, of course, is incredibly meaningful, but then to pull back on the bandwidth thing, we take it off the brand's plate, and it's just like we have this wealth of knowledge, these global learnings as well as like category specific learnings that they can take advantage of from day one.
Love that. So at the top of this, we were saying like demystifying the demo. You book a demo with FERMAT. We're going to do a ton of research into what you're doing today. We're going to come up with strategies on how we think you can kind of like turn FERMAT loose to help you go do that. We're going to show you kind of what those strategies are, take you for a little bit of a spin in the product, show you how like some of that could come together, how you would go about experimenting with these things. What, like, if someone out there is interested after this conversation, like what type of brand, what type of person is just kind of like a no-brainer? Like if that person's listening right now, you're like, yeah, you should come talk to me because like I can absolutely change the game for how you're approaching this.
I mean, I'm, dude, that's such a loaded question. It's like almost everybody, right? Like to a degree. Like, I mean, if there were going to be just, whether it be a category or like a use case that are just absolute home runs for us, like all day long. I mean, if you're a beauty brand that's trying to scale, if you're a wellness brand that's trying to scale, supplements, we again, just the depth of experience we have in that category, those categories is unreal, and we can get brands off the ground so quick in just firing. If we're talking about use cases, like one of the things that a few of the brands I've recently brought on were very focused on were, hey, we've historically had this audience that like attached to our product, and we're either one releasing a new product and we're not sure how we need to market that from like an offer, copy, creative standpoint, or we need to unlock a new audience for this product because we've essentially hit the ceiling of who from this audience is going to buy our product. So like those are really powerful use cases as well. Is just like we need to unlock a new audience, or we need to figure out how to get a new product to market. And then more just like tactical, in the weeds. Like if you're trying to figure out like offer optimization, just like in general, to the surface area and to the velocity elements, we can figure that out so quickly. Like that is just an absolute strong suit of ours. And like if subscription is a big part of your business, again, that is just unreal use case for us to hit home runs with.
If I had to summarize all of those, I think what I would say is like if you feel like you have like you're very sophisticated with your creative setup and like hey, the ads you're putting together and you feel like you have kind of like tapped out what is possible there, the next frontier is probably in the funnel. It's the
Yes.
post-click optimizations. So like hey, you can keep locally optimizing at that ad level, but if you feel like your ads are like as good as they are going to be and like you need more, that's where you can start to mess with this post-click experience. That's where you can build like a FERMAT funnel for whatever you are trying to accomplish and get the extra juice from that.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, because I mean, to your point, like if either it's like an order of operations, right? Like if you're struggling on the ad side, the post click isn't going to help you. Like you got to focus on that. But if you're at a point where you're getting clicks, you're getting eyes, and you're running creative and you're doing really well at that level, then 100%. Like there, and that's dude, like that's the beauty of FERMAT is there is no, I mean not FERMAT, but that's just the beauty of what we're doing is there is no finish line. Like you can always squeeze more revenue out of the ad dollars you put into the meta machine or whatever paid channel you're focusing on. And so it's not like a zero sum game. It's how do we get 1% better every single day so that we become a more profitable company that can scale, to the moon, as they say.
That's a really interesting thing at the end there of like when is this over, because like I hear that a lot too is like, oh, do I just take everything I'm learning in FERMAT and then apply it to my site? Like yeah, you can apply the learnings to the site of what you're getting out of FERMAT, but like it's kind of never ending. It's like you have this
Yeah.
idea, you find a new like one thing I love to talk about is like on the ad side of things, like you might find an ad that has like a great hook rate or like a great click through rate, but your ROAS and like your efficiency metrics on it are bad because like it
Yep.
doesn't necessarily line up with where you're sending them, that's not a bad ad. It's actually a good ad because like it was grabbing people's attention. So like, hey, every single time you're playing around over here and you find one of those, now it's like, okay, instead of throwing that ad out, let's see if we can build a better cohesive like full experience for that. And like you were talking about
Yeah.
before, can I unlock a new revenue stream? Can I go like push a different value prop? Can like all of these like little slices I can peel off that I would never want to change my website to go after, but like on the aggregate add up into something meaningful. That will always be the case. You're always going to find something new. Something that worked
Yep.
yesterday is going to stop working. And like just that experimentation mindset is like the most important thing about what we're enabling.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny you brought that up because that was that was honestly one of my least, like when I first kind of came in and started really wrapping my head around FERMAT, when people, because brands will ask that very often, like, well, why don't I just use FERMAT for a minute and then take these learnings and just put it on my site and say peace out? And like that question actually used to be like, I hated it. It like scared me. I'm like, God, like, oh, well, you're right. But the reality is like, it's completely, you can take learnings, you know, and there will be things that are so profound that yes, you want to pull them back into your website. But it's also the reality that like the way that you interact with customers on the acquisition side needs to, by design, be different than how you interact with them on your website. And so not only is the experimentation the big piece, but it's like you need to have these, what does Rabba say? These satellite sites, you know, away from Earth that are very focused and targeted towards meeting people where they are when you're trying to acquire new customers. And so just having that ability and freedom to not have to worry about making those changes on, you know, Shopify or whatever OMS, and just, you know, the resource and lift required to do so, is really powerful for brands. But so like now I love that question. It's like when someone asks me that, it's like, all right, buckle up.
You're gonna hear everything I love now. All right. So summarize this. You book a demo with FERMAT. We're going to go look at your ad creative. We're going to go look at where you're sending things today. We're going to get an understanding of what we think might be a problem, some opportunities for you. We're going to have that initial conversation, figure out like, does that actually match up? Is there something else you're looking for? Hey, talk about that landing page, not necessarily being like, how do we make as many landing pages as possible, but how do we truly get to like that hub and spoke methodology where I can have unique self-contained experiences for these ads that I'm building. We're going to show off the product there. Okay, Tyler, usually I end this by saying like, hey, where should people go and get in touch with you, Twitter, LinkedIn, or whatever. But I think what I'm going to say for this one is if you want to talk to Tyler, go book a demo and Tyler will take a look at your strategy and come up with recommendations for you.
I love it. Yeah, I don't think too many people are going to actively seek out a salesperson. So that's probably the best bet for a CTA at the end of here.
Maybe we're going to change that. I will put Tyler's social medias into here so that you can go follow him so that you can prove him wrong. But Tyler, this was amazing. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, had a blast. Thanks, Alex. Peace, everyone.